objective this morning is I'm going to paint a picture with the main corridors. The report actually goes into some of what it means that the corridors are developing, that they're opening up, and that there's new ways of trading in Africa, new old ways. And then Duncan's going to look at what it actually means. So it's I call it a map injection. You got across from there, but pretty much that. Okay. What we look at in the report is Durban and the rest of the subcontinent. For this morning, I haven't done much on Durban because the traditional route for the last 30 years has been through Durban, and everything sort of thinks it goes down there, and you're all quite aware of the DJ run and the Durban to the rest of the continent. So I'm talking to guys who actually know more than I do about it and would know more about it. But the message is that Durban's no longer the only game in town. So it's getting quite interesting. Look at the Walvis Bay corridors. We're very fond of the Walvis Bay corridors. And then Lobito, which is a new thing coming out. And talking to Duncan, quite interesting that he shares my views on it. Dar es Salaam, Beira, and then lastly Maputo. And you'll see why Maputo is last. Anyway, okay. All right. Free cup of coffee to anybody who can tell me where this is. Yeah. The new port, the new container port in Walvis Bay. They're building 2 new ports in Walvis Bay. The one is a SADC port. It's going to be a bulk port, and they're working on it already. It's already happening. And this is the new port, which will be operational in 2018. It's just to show you that we were actually there. I took those pictures. It's happening. I mean, the Chinese, 2.5 years ago, that was a patch of water. The Chinese are working 24 hours a day, and they're building it. And it's going to change things. And the reason it's going to change things is that the government is behind it. They've got a government with a policy. I also do socio-economic research. When the first time I started doing it, I tried to see how you could do development without government, because you think you can, and you can't. Anyway. Okay, next one. Another free cup of coffee. That's the new bridge over the joining Maputo with Black Matala. It's going to be the longest suspension bridge in Africa. It's really pretty, and it's not in planning stage. It's actually happening. So what I'm just saying is it's exciting stuff happening in Africa. It's exciting stuff that's sort of changing the dynamics of the way freight's moving. When I set off with the report, I thought it's quite easy. I'm going to put a spreadsheet together. I'm going to work out the costs of the different corridors, building all the costs of a standard container going through, and it turned out to be anything but standard and a completely moving target. But what I started developing was just a look at the different costs that you do have as a shipper, cargo owner that they should be looking at. So just briefly is obviously your logistics performance index. So that's I'll update that now. It's just come out, the new one. South Africa is 3.43, Botswana is 2.49, Namibia 2.66. So we're all pretty much of a muchness. The transport costs. So you look at your average domestic cost of transport. I've taken I think a UN report or a World Bank report on that. Tanzania works out the most expensive. Everybody else is pretty much in the same thing. Domestic speed per hour. Now, why that's important, I'm talking to the converted is if you're financing a freight that's costing $50 million worth of copper, every minute it's spending on the road, or every day it's spending on the road is actually costing you money, because by the time, because you want to get paid for it as soon as possible. So or if you try to carry fresh produce, again, every hour it's not as fresh as it was. So the domestic speed is quite important. South Africa is the best at the moment, we're second best. 34.9 kilometers an hour. Namibia, 65 kilometers an hour. So they're getting high and heavy cargo through there, out of gauge cargo coming through Namibia, because the stuff travels at 50, 60 kilometers an hour. You see this great big bulldozer coming past you. It's quite scary. So there's quite interesting dynamics there. Your exports, your border compliance, how many hours it's going to take, how many dollars it's going to cost, your documentary compliance, the hours. I've taken all those stats. And then your imports, all that. And then you've got different fees, your insurance fees, your customs fees, your permits, your storage, your warehousing, your inventory, your finance costs. And then what I wanted to build in was all the facilitation costs. otherwise known as bribes. But they, and that's a real cost, and it's a real problem in some of the countries. And so that's obviously the cost of moving a cargo freight from one end to the other. Port fees, this was quite interesting. I'm not 100% confident about these fees because most of them are supplied by the port authorities, and I think they lie. But again, if you look at the little graphs at the bottom, that's the export costs, the cost for exporting a container. And what I tried to look at was from the gate to on board a vessel, or from the vessel to through the gate, and that's where there's all sorts of charges. Some of the ports to charge you an internal transport fee. And it also depends on what the cargo is and how much I think they can rip you off for and what they feel like today. But anyway, again, South Africa is the lowest. On the imports, we're not that import friendly. Towards the 20 foot is the blue and the 40 foot is the red. So again, it's pretty much of a muchness if you look at that cost, because you must then factor in the transport costs. So we'll look just now and see how much closer Beira is, for example, to the copper belt than South Africa. So there's the whole sort of message out of the report is that you can mix and match, and you should mix and match. The copper guys, Glencore, they moved out of about 2 months ago. They moved their copper from Beira to Durban simply because the rand collapsed. So they're dollar based. They get paid in dollars. So if they're paying port fees in rands, and it made more sense than paying port fees in dollars in Beira. And then also what happens is that you got your South African truckers going up full, and they're coming back empty. So they're just doing marginal costing. So but it changed almost overnight, and that's how quickly these things can change. So that's why there's lots more involved in the thing. Ports, Durban 3.6 million TEU, future 4 million, draft to 12.8 meters. Walvis Bay 375,000 TEU, they're nowhere near that at the moment. Future 750,000, draft to 12.8 meters, same draft. Lobito is 10.5 meters, 118,000 TEU, going up to 700,000 TEU. Dar es Salaam should be 400,000 TEU, going up to, and there's plans for expansions, 10.7 meter draft. Nakala is the one with the beautiful draft, 15 meters, 100,000 TEU, plans for expansion. Beira is 400,000 TEU, and on a good day, a draft of 9 meters. Maputo is 100,000 TEU and a draft of 11 meters, which is also getting dredged down. So again, I mean, what we should be including in here, and again, I'm plugging my hometown, is things like Noga. Noga is supposed to be the transport hub for Transnet, for the Port Authority. It's not. They've done nothing about the backward connections on rail and that. So the stuff, the boxes get dropped in Noga, and then they get taken up left or right. And I mean, MSC's already moved back to Cape Town, but they have. So because there's no backward connections, Noga doesn't, even though it's a deep water port, it can take an 8,000 TEU vessel. It just doesn't feature in the calculations. Okay, so and the winner of all of these ports, all those factors, is a shipper, cargo owner, trader. There's some shippers here, and there's some actually get a lot more people to actually help them move the stuff. So the message is that there's now choices. You don't only have to go through Durban. Beira, 5 years ago, Beira could take a speedboat, and that's about it. And now they've dredged down. They can take a 5,000 TEU vessel, and they've got new cranes. So Beira is now an option. Durban, I mean, Walvis in a couple of years' time is going to be a fantastic option. It's really a good option. So the choices of ports, that you're not stuck with a particular port. And what we find is a lot of guys are stuck with a route. They say, no, we always use Beira, or we always use Durban because we know it and it works. And then all these service providers, and that's I think the risk of the service providers, the truckers and that have all got their warehouses, their trucking, everything else built in to serve Durban. Which doesn't necessarily serve the client. So it's kind of stuck in the status quo. And then what happened? I mean, Beira and Walvis, people started using it because when a couple of years ago when the commodity 2008 when the commodity price first tanked, the guys were saying, well, we've got to save costs. We've heard there's a port at Beira. Let's try it. And you find out there's an incredibly good trucking company called J&J and a couple of others. really professional operations. They can get your stuff to the port and it actually works on most days. So you know, and Beira have done some interesting stuff. I will get that on. But anyway, so you got a choice on ports. You've got a choice on the corridors. You no longer do have to do DJ. There's corridors happening all over the place. You've got a choice on service providers. The guys that actually now, even though they were long-standing relationships, they're actually starting to shop around. In some cases they're going for the lowest price, which of course the service provider says is the wrong thing because you can choose the cheapest oak is giving you the worst service. It's not necessarily true. Some of the guys are actually controlling their costs a bit better now and doing a better job of the costing. So you service freight forwarders, you can use different freight forwarders, you can use different clearing agencies, you can use different warehouses. I mean, there are warehouses going up all over. Again, 5 years ago in Beira, there were no warehouses. Now you trip over them. Lots of trucking companies, new trucking companies coming out, or trucking companies consolidating. And the truckers are seeing it. They're starting to move into the local markets. They're trying to register vehicles in the so they can do it. And that's sort of Duncan's going to talk a bit more about that. The suppliers can be anywhere in the world now. I mean, we found now in Zambia, the guys were getting disposable nappies from Dubai rather than from South Africa because of the rand, because the rand tanked. The input costs for the nappies went up, so we're no longer competitive. So the guys just bring them in through Dar. They don't have to use South Africa anymore. And this is a new trading city that's going up in Dubai. It's a 10-year development, launched on March the 1st. It's going to increase the UAE share of global wholesale trade, which is worth just 4.3 trillion at the moment. But then it'll go up to $40 trillion in the next 5 years. That's the kind of market these folks are looking at. And I mean, in the mines in Zambia import houses from, they were from South Africa, they now import them you get a container with all the bricks, the plans, the tools, everything. They were getting them out of South Africa, they now get them out of Dubai. Because it's cheaper. You know, I can't understand how that we can't compete, but we're losing market share there. Okay, and the losers are, you should have drums going. Anyway, the shipper cargo who doesn't regularly review the routes. So we're saying if you're shipping cargo, or if you're shipping cargo on behalf of somebody, just keep a track on the routes. Look at seeing what's happening, because what I discovered is that it's just a moving target. It happens all the time. There's new stuff all the time. And don't constantly challenge the agents. Now, I think the agents up in Zambia and places like it and Mozambique are definitely getting challenged to cut costs. And they don't demand added value. So what's happening is everybody's complaining is that if you're a freight forwarder or if you're a trucker now, you chuck in warehousing for free to get the service. So you add other services. So it's going to be very difficult to start charging for those services again when the market picks up, because your customer now expects that to be part of the cost. So you know, it's a value added. I mean, this is in Beira where they're bagging fertilizer there for the UN and for commercial companies. So it comes in bulk, and they bag it. So they're adding that value in the container in the port itself, or in the port in the town. And again, the guys starting to do sort of 3PL or 4PL or 10PL, whichever you want to call it. They're starting to add value at that thing. I think there is a company in Beira that's actually blending as well, because Beira serves Malawi, Mozambique, and Zambia and Zimbabwe, and there's different crops, and they all need different mixtures of fertilizer. So they're actually adding that value there. So the fertilizer is coming through there, and you know, none of the fertilizer is coming from South Africa. Okay, Volkswagen corridors, they're the best organised of the corridors. They've got a dedicated secretariat, they've got government backing, they've got international funding, and they've got a buy-in from all stakeholders. That's why they're working, they've got money. The Maputo corridor has been struggling to get funding. It's now got some money from the railway lines, the railway operators, but you know, it didn't have the support. What happened is Namibians got together, private sector, government, and said, what can we do? We've got a great big country, 2.3 million people. There's not really a market for anybody. But how can we generate the economy? We've got a port. Let's try and do something with it. So, I mean, they've now, their national development plan looks at turning Namibia into the SADC hub, transport hub, and logistics hub. So they've actually got a plan, and they're putting money into it. And yeah, And they're investing in road and rail. What Namibia does right on road is that there's a fuel levy, but it's ring-fenced. Our fuel levy during the, I think it was one referendum back or two referendum back, when the government wanted to get people to vote for change, and that was the previous government. Boris was out of town, out of the country. He was finance minister, and they stole the money and gave it to the civil servants to up their salaries so that they'd vote for the referendum correctly in the referendum. Ever since then, we've lost our fuel fund. It's gone into the deep hole of government, whereas in Namibia it's completely ring-fenced. So what's interesting is here you talk to a trucker, they bitch about the roads, and it's never going to come right because the country isn't going to, anyway. You go to Namibia and they say the roads are, they had rain for 5 years. The roads are actually in a state, but we're fixing them. I mean, it's immediate. The truckers immediately support the government because they know the money is being spent and the money is ring-fenced. So they've got good roads. That's why they can do 68 kilometers an hour on their roads. Also haven't got too much traffic. What's interesting now is when I first started going there, we're just part of the mixture, and Transnet's actually runs the place, runs the country, runs the region, and we're not going to compete. Now they're actually competing. They just, you look at their adverts now, preferred access to Southern Africa. That's how they're promoting Namibia. That's how they're promoting the Port of Walvis. And they've got another lovely ad which says, market access to X billion people. By 2018, they'll be able to do 750,000 TEU, a lovely 16-meter draft. They've already got dry ports for the landlocked countries, so they've gone to Botswana, to Zambia, and some have given them dry ports in the port. They've got offices in Zambia, DRC, South Africa, Brazil, and Botswana through the TKC, Transcoa Reserve. Okay, that's Namibia's strategic position. So when they looked at it, they said, where are we? We're in the middle of nowhere, so we're in the middle of everywhere. So that's all their border posts. So they actually link Angola, Zambia, Botswana, South Africa. So they actually got a good case. Their selling points: port efficiency, really good road network, security, efficient borders, minimal corruption. They're ranked 45 out of 168 by Transparency International. Any guess about South Africa? Low is good, by the way, not high. We're 61st. Challenges, they've got a skills challenge. Everybody in the region's got a skills challenge, and they're making it worse because they're making it more difficult to bring expats into the country. Mozambique's just about made it impossible over the last couple of months. In Namibia as well. They don't have the skills. They're getting them, but they don't have the skills at the moment. Distribution of the population is all sitting up in the north. Other port developments. Lobito can take them out. Beira could take them out, and then their distance from customers. If you do a value add in Walvis Bay, they were assembling trucks there that were going white label, that were going into Namibia, into Angola. It's still a heck of a long way. So you've got those logistic costs. So they're trying to manage that. They understand that's their problem. Trans-Kalahari, that should be the one that everybody in this room is using. They're not. It's their strategic focus. They just see this great big money machine in Gauteng. It hasn't got the traction, but progress is being made. It is an alternative to Durban if you want to reach Europe, the Americas, and there's a direct call. Maersk does a direct call for the Far East on Walvis Bay. So you can get there, but it takes longer. It's longer, obviously going through two borders, and it takes longer to get there than it does to get to Durban, except the port is more efficient. So again, you have to look at your efficiencies and your costs. But they've done a heck of a lot of work on improving the road through Botswana, on fencing it so you don't hit a donkey every time, and things like that. Those are serious problems for the truckers. It could get viable, but obviously they're looking at Bulawayo, Harare. It's 1,661 kilometers, so it's twice the distance to Durban. Trans-Orania, this to me is interesting because again from the Eastern Cape, they're targeting our manganese with Lüderitz. Transnet is busy trying to upgrade the rail, say they're upgrading the rail and building a new manganese terminal at Agnoga, which has again been delayed. We might have woken up too late. It could actually be going through Lüderitz. And then they're also looking at the grapes. They've already done some grapes through there. I think, who's calling there? Yeah, MOL, no. Yeah. Somebody is calling there. Maersk does call there, but there are calls. And again, they're upgrading the port. This is their the big corridor that's really working well. Again, it's got government involvement. Okay, Botswana one, the Transcaraïbe, also the governments are involved. Here there are 3 governments, they've just created their own secretariat. So the guys are working on getting things through the borders, the one-stop border post and things like that. A copper belt to Walvis Bay is 2,500 kilometers, and it competes directly against Durban and Dar es Salaam. So it's 2.5 from the copper belt to, that's the Zambian copper belt. From the DRC, it's 2.6, it's 4 to 5 days. It's actually very, very quick. So it's looking at all of those links. They're starting to do quite well, and they're starting to balance the loads. The problem was that the trucks were going one way empty and the other way full. And they could never get it right, but that is starting to come right. And the Kala corridor, that's another one that can be quite interesting. It's the natural depth is 14 meters. It's a natural port for Malawi and for the northern Zambia. There are road and rail links to Malawi. The only problem is that it's all flat. It's all almost at sea level or below sea level, and every time they have a decent rain, everything floods. So they have to raise the railway line and the road physically to actually build them so that they're flood-proof. So they spend money on it and then it gets washed away, but it is coming right. Apparently there's about 100 kilometers left of the road that needs to come right, and the rail link now from northern Mozambique, from the western there, from Tet through obviously is working. And the container terminal is being upgraded. Beira corridor, it's got a 30-year hangover. You talk to Oaks in Lusaka and Dola about Beira. No, we used it and it didn't work. You say, when did you use it? No, 15 years ago. Okay. So it didn't work for 30 years. It's now working. It's being upgraded. By the way, it's also operated, mostly, it's a private-public partnership, like Nikala, like Maputo. It's constantly being dredged. When I think MSC drove into their dredger and sank it, but they've got another one now. So, yeah, anyway. They've got new container gantries. They've got 4 gantries now. They've got a new road link that's happening, a four-lane road link. They couldn't take high and heavy through there because there was a bridge that could only take 50 tons. That bridge is being upgraded, so they can do they can supply the mines and everybody else who needs. And then huge investment in warehousing. Again, the port was quite strategic. When I first spoke to them, they said, what we're doing is everybody used to store everything in the port because there wasn't much to store. And then the port said, okay, we're actually a port, we're not a storage facility, and they started upping their rates. And it was quite strategic. They upped their rates, so it made it worthwhile for somebody outside to build a warehouse. Because it wasn't worthwhile building a warehouse at the time that the port was competing and it could take you out. And the costs are high. I mean, it costs you $200 a square meter just to prepare the ground. Because there's no stone, it's again at sea level. You have to actually import your stone, you have to import everything, and I mean, the one container terminal, they had to dig down 6 meters to actually start preparing the ground because it kept on collapsing. So the costs are high, but it's paying the guys off. It's paying off now because the port is working with the private sector. There's established hauliers, there's some really good hauliers there. The guys are balancing the loads, and there's quite a few direct calls. But Beira is the container port for Namibia, not for Namibia, for Mozambique. That's your distances. I mean, from Beira to Harare is 5:59. So traditionally, what the mistake they'd also made it was actually the port for Zimbabwe. So it was geared to handle Zimbabwe stuff in and out, and then Zimbabwe collapsed, and this was like anybody else. They realized you shouldn't have 80% of your business with one customer, so they had to broaden it. So Dar es Salaam from Harare is 1.3. Dar es Salaam from Harare from Durban is 1.7. So it's 5:59. It's a fraction of the distance. And same Bulawayo, same Malawi is much closer. Malawi is still trucking stuff through Durban. It doesn't seem to make a huge amount of sense to me. And you've got your DR Congo. It's also closer. Maputo corridor. Just about finished on. That's the oldest corridor. It hasn't realised its potential. Lack of government buy-in. Transnet has played games with them, where I mean, a lot of it's going through its bulk, and Transnet has said that they'd actually supply services, and they haven't because they've obviously focused on their own business, which is Richards Bay and Durban. But now, as I say, the port authorities from Zimbabwe, from Mozambique, Swaziland and South Africa are now working together and funding it. It's finally got funding from somebody else other than the private sector. There are no direct calls. The container operator we don't like. I think they're earning 600 TU a month now, something ridiculous. The Dubai ports seem to have, it's like the biggest port operator in the world, they seem to have no interest in that particular port. You probably can't see this picture properly, but they've actually, the little container terminal has been surrounded now by piles of iron ore and magnetite and whatever else. And in fact, if you go into the container terminal, you actually need to wear a mask. There's so much dust going around there. So they've been completely sidelined. So don't use it for. But, okay, that's that bridge, that beautiful bridge. That's part of a bigger picture. There's actually they're going to fix the road all the way down to Kuzi Bay. The road it's a seriously fun 4x4 trip. It's 4 to 6 hours to do 100 kilometers. They're going to fix that road, and that'll then link through Kuzi Bay to the northern highway. So it'll reduce that travel time by 4 hours. It's 450 kilometers from Durban. So it'll make Durban, like PE now is the de facto port for East London. It'll make Durban the de facto port for Maputo, a container port. Okay, so thank you. Went through it very quickly. There's lots more in the report. The Latin is for our editor. Okay, so that's Pliny the Elder, writing about 2,000 years ago. There's always something new in Africa, which is really what makes Africa fun and exciting. There's changes all the time. What's really nice, what I like, I'm probably not being particularly patriotic or whatever, but even 10 years ago, these guys were also reliant on South Africa, and they started saying, we don't like what's happening in South Africa, we need to get independent, and they're actually making plans, other ports, other roads, so they're not as dependent on South Africa for imports, for exports, for access to markets. So it's actually changing. So the governments, some of them are not quite functional, but as functional as they'd like to be, but it's working. And then this lovely quote, this year I got from I'm sure it's a standard quote, but from a lovely Africa hand. Africa always wins. The way that came up is I was talking that somebody had just got, one of the forwarders had just got herself a new client out of Germany, and everything was hunky-dory. And the first freight she brought through, when it got to the border, the Zambian border, it got delayed by a day. And the reason it got delayed by a day was that the border post on the Zambian side, everybody had taken time off, the whole border post, to go to a funeral.